Hello, my name is Andrew Gomison, and it is my privilege to welcome you to another brand new episode of the Culture Watch podcast. I'm so glad that you are here with me today. I just wanted to ask a question off the top of the show here to discuss a little bit of a housekeeping item. I have been using a background that utilizes my Speaking for Him logo when I make these podcasts, and people have commented that I kind of drift in and out of the background, and so maybe just doing my regular background but with the blur would be a help to that and look a little more natural. So I'm just asking for your input. If you care, you can share your input with the contact information that will roll at the end of the show, and I'd be really interested to see if anybody has an opinion on this matter, if this is actually better. I actually like it more than I thought I would, because originally I was like, I really just want my logo in the background. And actually, just by way of letting you know my thought process, I actually do have a dream of having a more professional looking studio in the future. But I am very grateful for what I have, and I'm very grateful for all of those who support my ministry. There were a few people, as I might have mentioned, that supported my ministry for my birthday a couple months ago, and I'm very grateful for what that allows me to do. And if you have considered supporting Speaking for Him in the past, you can do that at any time with the PayPal link on the website or directly to my address, which is also posted on the website at www.speakingforhim.com. That's www.speakingthenumber4him.com, and that will be repeated at the end of the show. Well, with all of that being said, let's take the opportunity now to jump into news for the week of July 20th. So today I want to start out to talk about the elections coming up and some really disturbing trends that are emerging. I don't know if you realize this, but we have a situation where the Democratic Party is even getting scared of some of the people that are coming to join them or claiming to be a part of them and turning the party even too liberal often for their tastes.
Well, speaking of vampires, the Democratic Socialists of America are sucking the blood out of the body politic, officially launching their new platform. And it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet of the dumbest ideas ever presented by the far left. They want to abolish the Senate, get rid of the presidency and the Supreme Court, and replace them with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. Yeah, screw you, Constitution. Plus, they want to give amnesty to all illegals and defund the Department of War, of course. Just listen to their socialist sales pitch.
Whenever people are like, oh my God, they want to get rid of the president, I was like, well, I don't know what we would call it in the future. We could call it the head honcho of whatever, you know? We have a feminism section that is trans-liberatory and also socialist feminist.
Everybody sees that, like, that Trump is super evil. I mean, every president since the founding of the country has been super evil, but somehow we have like one that is even more evil.
Good one. Wow. What a brain trust. But Nancy Pelosi, she's trying to bust up the commies by calling for a little less revolution and a little more party discipline. Watch.
I wasn't happy about people saying, let's spend a whole lot of money challenging Democrats. There are elements, exuberances in the party now that should be heard, and the rest. But when we have that vote, in the first couple of days of January, we will all, not me because I won't be there, they will all be voting for Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker. You run anytime you want and do whatever you want to do, but don't expect that to be welcome when we've got to stay completely focused on saving the Constitution, but more importantly, helping people at the kitchen table in a way that should be universal in terms of our purpose.
Oh, yes, they've got some universal ideas. They universally want to scrap the Constitution and destroy the country. So a lot of people in your party are calling for a big tent to welcome these people inside. They really hate America.
Not those ones. Those ones aren't good. They are perfect online fodder. They have very little applicability in the real world. Of all the policies, and they're the only one that I think you could have a grown-up conversation about is Medicare for all. But otherwise, it's all totally crazy. And I think that we are in a little bit of a crisis of Twitter is not real life and the online world is not real life when you look at how people are actually voting. And they're winning in these very blue seats, and then we're electing great moderate Democrats in swing seats where we need to win, like Kate Conley or Bobby Polito. And it was interesting. There was a new poll out for the Michigan Senate primary with Abdul Al-Sayed, who actually, by the way, isn't a DSA candidate. He identifies
further left.
Or a doctor. No, a physician. But it was interesting because, you know, everyone is dunking on Haley Stevens because of that clip that went viral, and she's up 7 in this poll. And with no college voters with no college degrees, she's up 22. With black voters, and 15% of Michigan is black people, she's up 46. And Al-Sayed ahead with college-educated white people.
Of course,
again.
it's always the college whites.
But who is going to?
Say
it is the college. I am the college
Can't
whites.
stand 'em.
I'm done. Anyway, Twitter is not real life.
Jesse.
Yeah.
What they're calling for is absolutely insane. And,
Yeah.
and I don't agree that these are fringe candidates. I see what they're doing in New York. I see Zohran Mamdani. I see what they're doing in L.A. They've got 2 commies running for mayor of Los Angeles. They will have the 2 largest cities in America. This is not fringe. And also, this is not a Trojan horse. They are telling you exactly what they want to do. And they're so dumb, they can't even come up with replacement terms. Your thoughts?
Yeah, like they're like, well, we want to abolish the Senate. And the Democrats in the Senate are like, yeah, they have some good ideas.
Yeah.
They just ran on saving democracy. And these people are like, you know, we're going to take away your right to vote for president.
What's so funny to me is that as a disabled person, I would be considered the prime candidate to be all for socialism. Because a lot of people think that I should be content just to sit at home, not work, not make anything of myself. And they make it very difficult to do that while you are on disability. And I've already stated in the past how I've been off disability for a year before because I was making too much to stay on disability, but not enough to compensate. And God provided during that year, don't get me wrong. But the idea that I could somehow, on 28 hours a week at just over $11 an hour, make enough money to not be on disability when all of my equipment needs are sky high. I can't get a decent vehicle for less than $20,000 to $25,000. I'm a fairly healthy person, but whenever I do need intervention and whenever I do need something medical, it's expensive, and so I'm considered a medical liability. Here's the bottom line. As I said, a lot of people think I should hate capitalism because their view is that it's keeping people like myself down. But the reality is, even though I've been underemployed for a lot of years, I would never want anybody telling me where the line is that I have to stop earning. I'm continuously trying to better my life and better my income despite the challenges that I have had. And it's been my experience that the people that cry the loudest about capitalism and wish there was socialism of some form are the people with the most dead-end jobs who show little or no desire to get a different job. And here's one of the things that bugs me is when people who have a college degree get a job that doesn't require a college degree, and then they complain that they don't have enough income. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every job requires a college degree, because there are plenty of good jobs that don't. My main point is, if the job that you have doesn't require a unique and specific skill set, and then you still think it should be a high paying job, you are the one who isn't understanding how these things work. The reality is, if you have skills, you should work to hone them in such a way that you can be a greater marketed employee for the skills that you have, and that you can continuously be improving yourself and your income prospects. And I have tried to do that my whole life. I'm at a place in my ministry where I'm doing more work than ever before. I'm putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this thing, and I'm trying to raise the amount of income I make from it without sounding like I'm always talking about money, which seems like a weird juxtaposition. But socialism isn't the answer. Because if your answer to financial difficulty is this person who's not working shouldn't have to work, so we should come up with a system so nobody that doesn't want to work should have to work, but then the onus is on the people that can work to do all the work that's not going to work. And if we truly adopt a socialist system, the people who are the hardest working people in this economy, hypothetically, could stop working because their hard work doesn't pay off. It doesn't give them any benefit. It's not going to get them ahead in life. And so these are the things that we need to consider as we talk about these issues. The thing that most people don't understand about the capitalistic system in which we live is the fact that rich people provide jobs. I don't know how many employees Jeff Bezos has, but I know it's a lot. I don't know how many employees Elon Musk has, but I know it's a lot. I don't know how many employees Donald Trump's corporations have, but I know it's a lot. I know people like to dog on the DeVos and Van Andel families in West Michigan, where I'm from, but they employ a lot of people, and they have injected a lot of jobs and resources into this economy with all that they have done for the downtown area specifically. And of course, our children's hospital is named for the DeVosses as well. So if you took all of those resources away because you said we have to punish the rich people, then you're missing the point. And what's scary about this clip is you have Democratic socialists saying the quiet part out loud. There have been a lot of Democrats tiptoeing around these issues, and it's getting to the point where the Democrats are starting to realize that if we continue down this road, it's crazy. It's not working. Mamdani said that when he became mayor, stuff like riding the subway was going to be free. But guess what? The subway got more expensive almost as soon as he became the mayor. He says that we shouldn't need ID to vote, and yet you needed like 3 forms of ID just to get a job shoveling snow for the city of New York. This is a ridiculous double standard that continues on. And another thing that bothers me is people will say, well, churches hate poor people, so we shouldn't rely on them to help take care of poor people. We should just be relying on the government. Since when have you known the government to implement any program and do it well? The government is busting at the seams, and it's doing way more than it's supposed to do, and that's why we're suffering greatly in a lot of ways. We need to bring back an America that focuses on personal responsibility and allows people to get ahead. I would be in a much better position if Social Security disability said you can work your 40 hours and we'll keep you on benefits until you can afford to go without them, than it is now, where they give me $1,300 a month as long as I comply with everything they ask me to do. I would become more self-reliant, and they would ultimately be paying less. It's a really ridiculous system that we have now. And I'm sorry, but it would be much better for me and for the rest of society if I was able to get a full-time job and fully contribute to what is going on. But you know what? I'm not despairing. I'm not giving up. I'm going to continue to work hard to try to honor the Lord. And I know that when the time is right, He will put me in the right situation to be the contributing member of society and the protector and provider that I desperately want to be as a man. As we move on to our next story, it is important to acknowledge that over the last week we have lost someone who is a key polarizing figure in the U.S. Senate. That is Senator Lindsey Graham. His post in the Senate has been temporarily filled by his sister, and she's going to hold it for a couple months until they have a special primary. And I'll be really interested to see how all this shakes out. But it was a really sudden death, and it's really sad whenever anyone dies. And I've seen certain liberals celebrating his death. And I said on social media earlier this week that I would never celebrate anyone's death, even if I greatly disagreed with them. Because I think everyone is someone for whom Christ died, and I would want them, whoever they are, to come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ before they meet eternity. Here's a tribute from an Oklahoma senator by the name of James Lankford for his dear friend, Lindsey Graham.
Mr. President, a lot of words have been said today about our colleague Lindsey Graham and his passing. As you know well, where my desk sits, I literally sit and stand directly behind Lindsey's chair, where right now there's a black drape and white roses, where he should be today, but he's not. We miss our colleague. We miss his humor. We miss his ideas. We miss his insight on a lot of things. His passion for Israel, his passion for national defense, his passion for the life of the unborn, his passion for this body and for our nation and for South Carolina. But as much as we miss him here, we also understand full well there's a lot of grieving in South Carolina, and especially with his family, and with Darlene, who will be here tomorrow, being sworn into this body as she takes her seat, literally sitting in the same chair that he was sitting in 2 weeks ago. So, Mr. President, I thought it'd be appropriate that we do more than just talk about him. Many of us have actually shared, we're praying for his family, we're praying for his staff, we're praying for the folks around him. So I thought it'd be appropriate here in this body that we don't just talk about him, that we actually fulfill the words that are on the wall in our building where it says, "In God we trust." And just to take a moment to just express that. So, Mr. President, I'm going to take just a moment to be able to pray for Lindsey's family. Father, I do ask that you would help Darlene and help the whole family right now as they grieve and struggle through this. The 10 million emotions that she has to feel right now, both with the loss of her brother and with the responsibility of coming to this body to hold this spot for months. Pray that you would give her the strength that she needs, the insight that she'll need in the days ahead, and that you would comfort her as she grieves. For all of Lindsey's family, so many friends, for his staff, God, we ask that you would fulfill what your word says in Psalm 34:18, where it says that you are near to the brokenhearted and you save those who are crushed in spirit. We count on that today, Father, because this body will need your help. Lindsey's family needs your nearness. People of South Carolina and so many friends will need that. So, Father, help us as we grieve, and help us to be able to honor you in the days ahead. God, I'm grateful that you are the one who cares for each of us. and that you can be trusted every day. So we are grateful for that. So help us, guide us in the days ahead to do things well and to be able to honor you in our work. That's what we ask in the name of Jesus. Amen. Mr. President, I remember the first week that I came into this body, Lindsey caught me just in a random conversation, and he said, "You and I are the only Southern Baptists that are in the Senate now." And he smiled at me and said, "You should probably talk about that more than I do." And I've never forgotten that whole conversation. That was just classic Lindsey. He's a person that loved this body, he loved the country, he loved the people of South Carolina, and it showed. And as we grieve, I pray that we grieve together and that we go again and again and again to the source that hears our grieving and that meets us in our pain. With that, I yield the floor.
I remember the first time I heard about Lindsey Graham was probably in the 2016 election cycle. I mentioned before that we had a plethora of Republican candidates at that time, and I think Lindsey was kind of middle of the pack for me. I think he verbally espoused a lot of the conservative ideals that I believed in, but I wasn't sure how firmly he would stand on them. And sometimes the things that he would say or the things that he would champion would be hit or miss. But I think that there's no doubt whatsoever that Lindsey cared about America and that he cared about his state. And I think he tried to do his best for his state. And again, I just want to emphasize here because I know a lot of people, even within the Republican Party, didn't really like Lindsey Graham. But I also know there were a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who respected him even if they didn't agree. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I hope people take away from him passing away is that we can disagree about someone's politics without totally disparaging them. There is no way to have a profitable discussion about issues if your first instinct when you hear someone speak is to hate what they say because they said it. And I feel like there's way too many people who have a preconceived idea, especially about conservatives. I think conservatives can be guilty of this as well, but I think especially about conservatives, you get a preconceived idea of who you think they are, and you decide to hate them because of that. And then nothing they say matters. Nothing they say will change your mind. And to me, I think that's the worst part about how some people are responding to Donald Trump. You are allowed to have disagreement. Disagreement is what makes this country work. Conversation about disagreement is important. But if you have such a dislike for someone that you can't even talk about what they believe and why you do or do not agree with it, then you have a problem. Here's the reality. There were so many people that every single day of the Biden administration still woke up and their first thought and their first vocalization of that thought was Donald Trump is so bad. And he wasn't even president. And I think that is a really bad precedent to set. So today I am praying for Lindsey Graham's family. I am praying that his sister is able to do some good things and at least provide some healing while she sits in the Senate for a couple months while they field a replacement. And I don't know what Lindsey thought truly about Jesus. I guess it's mentioned in this clip that he was a Southern Baptist, so I guess if he believed in Jesus as his Lord and Savior, then he's in Jesus' presence right now. But if he didn't, he's not. It's as simple as that. Hebrews 9:27 says, "It is appointed unto man once to die, and after this, the judgment." So I pray for Lindsey's family. My hope is that Lindsey is in heaven with Jesus and that one day we will see him again. And I do thank Lindsey for the times that he stood up for conservative values. I think most notably on the confirmation of Justice Kavanaugh. And again, this is another situation where you can disagree with someone on many fundamental things. But if you escalate that, as so many did, to this idea that Kavanaugh should be dead because you don't like him, that is the wrong thing to do. So we need to all evaluate how we address these issues. Remember, every single person you come in contact with is someone for whom Christ died, and they should be treated as such. Well, I'm about to wrap up the show today, but I wanted to leave you with some devotional thoughts from a young lady by the name of Rion Paige. I first became aware of her several years ago when she went on the X Factor and she sang a Carrie Underwood song. I believe it was Blown Away. And she showed a great deal of talent. Well, in recent days, I have seen more content from her. Apparently, she stepped away from singing for a time because she was discouraged. But she felt God calling her back into singing. And she has a very powerful testimony. She's another one that I think it would be great to eventually have on the podcast. So maybe you can pray with me that will happen in the future. But here she is talking about God's goodness in her life and how his goodness was proven to her in part by the gift of a microphone stand.
When I was 4 years old, I realized that I could not hold the microphone at karaoke, just like everyone else, and that equally broke my heart and also set me on an amazing trajectory for the rest of my life. When I was in school, they tried to get me to write with my feet, but instead I wrote with my hands, and the joke is I actually have the best handwriting in my family. When I was 17, I sat inside a car, and they said you will not drive it, but today I actually drove my husband's gigantic truck. And I realized today, as I was driving the truck and as I'm releasing music, that everything goes back to that mic stand. You see, they bought the mic stand special for me because I went to karaoke every Friday night as a treat for getting good grades. And I realized that it was okay that I was set apart, that it was okay that they bought the mic stand for me, even though it felt really scary because it was tucked in a corner and all the kids wanted to use it. And of course I let them. But in my life, I found that there are a lot of moments where I have to ask for help. I have to ask to be set apart or to have special treatment, as the world would call it. And I felt embarrassed, scared. But it's wild because when I sing, all of those things are taken away because it's something that I can do with calling attention to the Lord and not my deficit. So I sat for years after college, quiet, because I had a lot of heartbreak from friends and help and lack of help and things that had been spoken over my life, and decided I was going to stop singing. But instead I was going to prove that I could do something in school because disabled people don't go to school. They don't go to college, but I did. And God asked me to have a song in my heart again. So as I release this next song called Fruit, it all goes back to the mic stand. It all goes to the fact that I was an inconvenience with the mic stand in the corner, but that allowed me to sing. So, as you think about today and about what you're going through, I want you to think about how you might be an inconvenience to the world. And I know that sounds crazy to reflect on being an inconvenience, but asking for someone to be the hands and feet of God might actually be the thing that teaches them what the Holy Spirit is and what it is like to love him and what it is like to know him. And I truly believe that in your deficit and in my disability, God is actually showing his character, and that he's showing what it means to actually look like him. And if we really think that we're made in his image and that we should serve each other, then that's exactly what we need to do. We need to be bold and ask for the mic stand. And yes, Fruit was recorded with a mic stand, and you will hear it really soon. So I'm excited to see you guys Friday.
This hits home for me because I was actually, as of this recording, having a conversation very much like this last night at a small group that I'm a part of, where I said that one of the biggest eye-opening things to me was to come to terms with the fact that I was disabled and that God had a purpose in me being disabled, and that actually, as weird as it sounds, one of those purposes was to give people the opportunity to learn how to serve others and to learn how to respond to people like myself in a positive way. A lot of people don't know how to respond to anyone in the disabled community until they experience disability themselves by having it in their family or friends group. And I count it a privilege to be certain people's first encounter with that. I just try to live my life like going to work at a camp or doing theater or working at a school or podcasting, any number of things that I've done. I just try to do it and live my life and enjoy my life. But then I step back and I realize that each of these opportunities where I shatter expectations that the world places on me because of my disability, I have the opportunity to say, I've met this challenge. What's your problem? And I'm not saying that in a negative way. What I'm saying is, if I in a wheelchair can meet the challenge that this presented, then why are you making excuses about not being able to meet the challenges that God has placed in your life? And I truly do hope that people look at me and say of me that if I can do this, if I can keep going, so can they. And I've struggled with pride in the past, and I probably will again. So I'm doing my best not to say this in a prideful manner, but I truly believe that that has given me purpose in life, to realize that I can be a living testimony of God's grace and show people that God plus me as a majority, and that I can accomplish so much more than so many people think I can. You know, there's a lot of discussions about quality of life. We talk about it a lot here on either the regular Speaking for Him podcast or on Culture Watch. You know, a while back we talked about a couple that decided to abort their baby with Down syndrome and all that entailed, and it was a dicey thing for people to be talking about. But I was really glad that people were having the conversation, because so many times those conversations get tossed under a rug. Now Rion Paige is disabled. She talked a little bit about that in the video. And I know someone with a similar disability to her, and watching him navigate the world when I met him several years ago when I got my service dog was really exciting. And then getting to know Rion through her social media presence, I kind of understood a little bit more of what she's gone through than I would have otherwise if I hadn't met my friend in the dog placement class for Canine Companions. So it's just interesting how even as a disabled person, I can learn more about other people's disabilities by encountering them and by having a teachable spirit. So my prayer for you is that you would realize that everyone is going through something and that we don't know what they're going through. And so we should always endeavor to be kind and ask God, how can we minister to the people that we come in contact with? And if we have an open heart to those things, God will show us very specific things that we can do to help others. And I truly appreciate Ryan's heart in this video. I'm glad that she has learned to do certain things for herself. I'm glad that she can write with her hands rather than her feet, even though it is a challenge. So it's so amazing what can happen when you get determination and you see what God can do through you. I remember when I was a kid, one of my biggest struggles was learning typing. And unfortunately, my school was more intent about trying to get me to type with two hands, which was never going to happen, than they were about teaching me to type with one hand. And it is kind of surreal to look back now and realize that I don't do a lot of typing with my hands, period, because I do so much by voice today, but the technology wasn't there when I was just a little kid. So all this to say, I hope that hearing Ryan's testimony will encourage you that no matter what struggles you're going through, that God has a purpose for it. And if you see someone struggling, don't be afraid to ask them if you can help. I know that a lot of disabled creators will get on and say they don't like it when people just assume they need help and start helping them out of the blue. But I would venture to guess that the majority of us would be grateful if someone asked, and we will give you an honest answer as to whether we actually need help. And sometimes we'll take it because we want it to go faster and we're grateful, and other times we're totally fine with it taking longer if it means that we can do it. It just depends case by case. But I hope that the most important thing you got out of this video is that even though Rion has had her challenges, she knows that God is good. I would encourage you to check her out on social media, because it seems like God has not only restored her desire to sing, but she's using it to glorify Him. And that's just an amazing thing for anyone to do. So I hope that encourages you today, and I hope that if this episode has encouraged you, you will share it with your family and friends. Maybe you pick 3 to 5 people who have never heard the ministry of Speaking for Him before. That would be very much a blessing to me. And I just want to encourage you that this podcast is now on your favorite podcasting app, but also on YouTube. So if you want to watch me do the podcast, if you want to see the video clips that I'm reacting to as I'm watching and reacting, you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. I'm slowly growing my presence there, and I'm excited about that. So please continue to give the YouTube channel a look, and I would truly appreciate it. I was really reluctant to jump on the video podcast bandwagon because when I'm doing a podcast, I like to multitask, and it's harder to multitask with YouTube. But apparently a lot of podcasters have found that people like to watch their videos. So if you appreciate the video content of this podcast, subscribe via YouTube so you won't miss a single video drop. And if you have comments, questions, or concerns, please let me know what they are with the contact information that's about to roll at the end of the show. And with all of that being said, have a great week and keep serving the best of masters.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Your host has been Andrew Gomison, founder of Speaking for Him. For information on today's show and to leave us comments and voicemails, please visit Speaking for Him. That is speaking numeral for him.blogspot.com. You can find Andrew's ministry at speakingforhim.com. That's speaking the number 4 HIM.com. And when you look for us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or all other major podcast platforms, let us know what you think of the podcast by leaving a rating and a review. Intro music for this podcast is provided by Audio Kraken. Transition music is provided by Superstate. Both of these tracks are available free of charge from pond5.com, pond5.com.